Thank you so much, Shishir, for joining us on this podcast at Dawdle. Another episode with a very prolific leader, comes with enormous amount of experience. We have very interesting set of topics to discuss today. But before we go there, I would like to give a formal introduction about Shishir. He's a highly accomplished enterprise architect and technology leader with deep expertise in data, cloud, and microservices driven architecture within BFSI and digital ecosystem. He's currently serving as vice president at Deutsche Bank, where he drives enterprise-wide technology and data strategy, aligning complex banking systems with evolving business and regulatory requirements. He has a track record of working with Maersk, Accenture, and Spicework, Jeff Davis, where he has architected scalable cloud native platforms, advanced data governance frameworks, and high performance ETL pipelines that enable data driven decision makings and business growth. I hope a lot of you must be aware about ETL pipelines because we have talked about it a lot with the previous guest as well. He's known for designing resilient, event driven microservices and modern data architecture. He has consistently led large scale digital transformations, cloud migrations, and system integrations across global enterprises. And obviously, out of all this, his leadership combines deep technical expertise with a strategic vision, which kind of enables every organization that he has worked for to build future ready, compliant, and scalable technology ecosystem. Thank you so much, Shishir, for joining us and taking out time.
Thanks for bringing me into this podcast. Thank you, Rishikesh. I mean, I love to discuss with you and to connect with you on this topic. Maybe it will be fruitful for the audience as well, maybe going forward. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shishir. Shishir, you have evolved from hands-on engineering and building systems to now shaping enterprise-wide architecture in a highly regulated banking environment. So what fundamentally changes in how you think when you move from building systems to governing them at a scale?
Sure, Rishikesh. Okay, so the lesson which I have learned, and if I can talk about my journey throughout my career, 50, 16 years, when I started my career as a developer, like a full stack developer, the Java and the JavaScript developer, right? I mean, if I talk about the decade back or 15, 20 years back, we have simple monolithic based architectures, like so in the one of the set of the bundle or maybe packages, we have all these layers, right? We have the UI layer, we have the business layer, then we have the database layer, right? And then as a developer, we always has vision to work on the particular module level, right? So let's suppose if I assign to some of that payment based services, right? So my vision, my thought is completely aligned with that particular modules, or maybe that some of the integrated modules as well, right? In that particular scope, generally on the development level, we don't have that particular visibility, that level of scope. Okay, if I can think about on the different services level, how it is going to be integrated, maybe I have to think about the certain standards level, right? Because my scope is very limited to that. As long as I was evolving from my, as a software engineer to the senior software engineer, my scope is also drastically getting changed, right? That I started thinking that, okay, it's not about writing the code itself, but, we need to also think about that, how our code is reusable, right?
Yes.
The code, the model which I have written, right, it's not going to be only used on the dev model. Maybe it can also use on some other modules as well. Then to making a code as a reusable, what kind of the design patterns that we need to be bringing? Before than that, what kind of the standards we need to be bring? Because I have to be write a code in the some certain way, in some standard way, that it has to be easily integrated with the or easily used by the some other modules as well, right? So my perspective is start thinking the that particular directions, and then when we after some certain years, 4 5 years, when I was in one of the training that okay, what are the design, why we need a design patterns, right? What is the purpose of the design patterns? How design patterns is going to be solved some certain common problems as well, right? And once we have write any code as per the given design patterns, right? In that particular way, how it is going to be useful by the others, right? How it is well documented, right? Like suppose if I'm going to write some sort of the module, some sort of the code, right? How others, if once I leave that particular code, maybe that how well this is understandable by the other developers as well, right? So that is what we learn as a part of the design patterns, the best practices, the standard practices, the documentations, right? Code documentation. And when we gradually move after 7 8 years, then we thought, okay, writing the code is not only about writing the functional aspect of that code, but we need to be also thought about the non-functional part of that code, right? If I talk about the non-functional part, how much your module is scalable in the vertical of the horizontal scaling. Let's suppose that today you are going to be write the code for suppose any 10 or 20 or 30 users going to be used a from module. Let's suppose any given point of time the concurrent user is going to be increased to some certain threshold, like support 100 or maybe 200 or any 300 concurrent user. And so whether your model has to be sustainable, right, to accept those. So you need to make sure that your model should have the good throughput. Throughput means how many number of the user can get the response from your code, right, your modules, right. If I talk about the latency, right, how much time that your module has to be take to process the second request, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, maybe more than that, right? What are the scenario where your code is not able to respond? The failure scenario, right? So how you're going to handle this one, right? And then how make sure that your module or your services has to be secure, right? In terms of any attack, right? What kind of the authentication you're going to apply? What kind of the authorization is going? Who is going to be access your services, right? How much extensively that he can or she can access the data, right? So in my journey, when I started to thinking about only on the module level, then moving towards on the writing the code on the basis of the standard practices, then design patterns, then think about the non-functional requirement part as well, implementing the non-functional part on the on the module level, then services level, and then infra level. All this knowledge is going to be bring me in a way that okay, now I'm in a position where I can think about the architecture level, right? Because I have that perceptions to see the particular services not only on the module level, but think about on the functional part, especially on the non-functional part, especially on the design pattern part, right? What kind of design pattern is going to be used, right? And then as an architecture, the one of the thing also has changed that when you look on the any module and services, you have to be always look on the particular module level. But when you work as architecture, you always look on the that particular services not on the module level, but on the 360-degree fit, right? On the very vertical level, right? Okay, how your whole system is going to be work, how many modules are there, right? How all the modules are going to be integrated, right?
Right.
How this data is going to be exposed in the outside of the your system, right? So your perception is getting changed slightly, right? And all my past experience to bring me in a way that okay, now it is a time where I can to start thinking or conceptualizing any particular solutions on the 360-degree fit, and then to to provide the solutions on the base of the whether the what kind of the design pattern is going to be work, what kind of architecture is going to be used, what kind of principle is going to be used, whether it is good to have in the cloud, whether it is good to have in the on-prem, and how the data is going to happen. So this is how the things has been changed during my know last 15 16 years. Yeah.
He well explains, Shishir,
Mhm.
this, and also, in banking, you have regulations like DORA and BaFin. They aren't compliance layers; they kind of shape architecture decisions themselves. Can you walk us through how regulatory requirements influence system design, especially in areas like resilience and data recovery?
Definitely. So, I mean, uh, mainly we work for the business, right? Maybe I can take some certain example and then probably slightly, we can gradually move to the regulators part. So we work for the different domain. We work for the telecom, we work for the banking. The software can use multiple domain, right? Then we have advertisement technology, we have education technology, we have medical technology, right? The requirement of that business is different from their business domain to domain, right? Probably if I can talk about any education system or any advertisement based domain, right? They want to be, to publish the ad, they want to sell their details of the user or maybe do something else, right? Probably that particular space is not so highly regulated because there's no monetary related part is going to be
Yes.
involved, right? But when it comes to the bank, like what basic principle of the bank, because bank is going to be manage the money, right? The monetary related, the financial part of the that any individual person, right? And if any given period of time, if anything is going to be breached in the bank, that's not going to be impact only that particular individual, right? It's also going to be impact on that particular region, that particular country as well, right? So that's why the banking is one of the space where government and some non-government organization has defined some certain regulators, right? So
Yes.
regulators that they make sure that if I can talk about the BaFin, right? So BaFin is basically a kind of the financial regulators, especially in the European market.
Those.
Likewise, whatever that we have Federal Reserve banks in the US, right? So they generally make sure that whatever the financial services you're providing, right, it has to be secure and there's no financial unregulated has to be happen and there's no anomalies is going to happen, there's no unauthorized transaction has to be happen, right? So these are the things which generally these regulators are going to be take care, right? Now, as an architect, when we are going to be design any sort of the enterprise architectures or any, other services, or maybe it is comes integration or whether we need to be make sure that all their principles, all their regulatory requirement has to be covered, because on their, schedule basis, I would say, or maybe, some periodic basis, they need to do some certain audit, right? And every bank nowadays that they have to be go for the audits for this regulators, and they used to be generated reports, right? From their principles, from their compliance, where your bank has to stand. They are working perfectly, whether they have any data breach, whether they have any security breach, that those kind of the reports is going to be sometime go for the public.
Yes.
And if it is going for the public or maybe with the government, right, they are going for the, certain fines or certain punishments, right? Which generally no financial services has to be warned, right? So as an architect, we need to be make sure that whatever the designing, whatever architecture, we have to follow certain standards. We have to make sure that we are compliant. So on the basis of that, we define. If I can take example of the data architecture, right? So we have to talk about, we generally define the data governance as practices, right? So which most of the regulators want, that how your data governance practices is going to be implemented, right?
Yes.
So data governance policy, what it says that, okay, if your applications required any sort of data, right? Why you need that data? First, you need to define why you need this data, right? You should have very particular reason to having those data, right? So once you have defined, maybe I'm not sure whether I can go very deeply into this one, because,
Yes.
but I can, try to make it as a high level.
Yes.
And then once you know that you have a very foolproof use case to have this data, then you have to define where you are going to pull this data, right? Who is the authoritative source? You cannot go and, to Google it out and to get the data, get the data. No, no, no. This is not going to happen. You have authoritative data source. There are authoritative data source in market where you can pull those data. So to make sure that, and to tell to the regulators when it's that, okay, we pull this data from the authoritative data source, right? We are not going to be scrubbing and scrolling the data from the different sources. No, they are the authoritative, because their responsibility to manage the life cycle of the data, and that's why they are very authoritative, and they have their own data governance practices to keep the data, right? So we know that, okay, we are going to pull this data from the authoritative source. Then we have to define that, okay, how we are going to manage this data in our ecosystem. How is the data lineage, right? Who's going to be used the data, right? What is the life cycle of data? Who updated the data? Who inserted the data? Who deleted? Ideally, deletion is not going to be happen nowadays. There's no concept of deletion. So generally, it is how long you have to keep the data, right?
Yes.
So the data archival policy, right? How the data is going to be refreshed in certain point of time. And once you have that just data residencies in your record management, okay, you want to keep this data for the 6 years, the 5 years, 10 years, as per your use cases, right? Then how you're going to be archive this data? Oh, then the next step, what is the roles and responsibility? Who are the owner of this data in your vertical? The owner means the team who's going to pull this data and who's going to manage the residence of this data, right? Then there's another team who is going to use the data. So let's say that team A is the owner of this data, so they have ownership to manage the lineage of the data. But team B is just a consumer, right?
Yes.
So the moment when they're going to consume the data, what are the responsibility they need to be paid? So they going to be recite data from their own database? Probably not, because they are the just user. They should not supposed to be keep the data. If they want to keep the data, they have need to raise some certain exceptions why they want to be keep the data, and when they are going to be archive the data, right? So these are the policies. Then we have to also define that how your data is going to be at transit, because data is in the two different way. When data is going to be in transit from point A to point B, and the data at rest when in point C, the data is going to be stored, right? So how you're going to secure the data, right? In the transit, that no one is going to be, to hack your data, right? All the data is going to be secured in the your database in or any data storage, right? Not only the database, but any storage. How you are going to be encrypted your data, right? So these are the data security that we then the data quality is one of the major aspect in the any data governance practices. So because if your data quality is not great, then nobody can use the data, right? So this data quality principle that you need to be make sure that you are aligned with some certain standards. There's some tools in the market like Colibri is one of the tools which if you're going to integrate with your data or any data store, it tells that how quality is your data in respect to the data redundancy, data duplicacy, data refreshment, data lineage. So this generally tools which banks or any other enterprise architect organizations to generate the report out of that, and that is something which they also share with the auditors and the regulators as well, right? So in nutshell, that is how the your whole data governance policy look like when you are going to be especially work on the any highly regulated banks. And then the technology, the tools which are going to be used to manage those data, that is the approved one or not. Whether those have the regular patches is going to be released by the vendors. If any breach is going to be happen in their technology tools, that you need to be have some plans, right? How you're going to be, to migrate. So these are the things which, as a part of the so this and talk about the BaFin. So DORA is the one of the another regulated agency which they make sure that if you're running any financial services or infrastructure should be, a high availability. It should not like that. Okay, if I have to be go for the any ATM, if my ATM is not working, I cannot withdraw the amount. And this is something which is going to be, to not give you the good a perspective that okay whether somebody can really rely on the that bank, right? Because whenever I go I cannot to take out the money from the ATM and I am not going to use this one. So do this make sure that your IT infrastructure should be running in a very high availability zone and to provide timely report to the DORA that okay these are the high availability, the scalability part that you are going to be maintaining. There's no downtime as such that is reported so far in maybe any periodic time, maybe 6 months or last 1 year, so that DORA can certify, okay, you have very good infrastructure in your place. There's no downtime that we have seen so far, and you have some good category you're willing to be awarded.
And also, Shishir, you have worked extensively on enterprise data models and data vault architectures as well. So, in reality, what are the biggest challenges organizations face when trying to build a truly unified data foundation? And where do most of the data transformation programs fail?
Makes sense. So generally, Rishikesh, I mean, in my experience, I have seen when any team they have started right to building any solutions, any design, any architecture, or any system, right? Probably most of them they started with as a POC phase. If the POCs got succeeded, then they are started incrementally this one, right? And then reached to the some certain level, they have realized, oh, our database is not so scalable. Seems like that we have lot of data density in the database. We have a lot of duplication in the database. So what we'll do, okay, let's create another table to store it because anyways we had to release that functions on the Asana way. Make sure that it has to be get released. Whatever it is going to be happen in the database, just we will take care later part of time, right? That's not the correct approach, right? So when we talk about the unified data architecture, right, we have to be, going to fix all these issues, right? So whenever we have to be design any applications, first we need to think about that how your database is going to be, your scheme structure, the database architecture is going to be look like, right? Generally, academically, if I talk about what we have studied and what we have learned in that, so we have ER diagram, right? So entity relation, we know that what are the different objects, that object is going to be mapped to the entity, and we have a multiple entities, then what are the relationship between those entities, right? Now, if I can go a step further on this one, so this entity relations models sometimes also depend upon when it is going to implement that what kind of design pattern is going to use, right? We have certain design patterns when we are, to define the any data architecture, right? We have data vault, we have data mesh as well. So data vault is the generally one of the very complex uh, data patterns, I would say, design patterns, where we need to be have a requirement where there's no deletion is going to be happen, and we need to be make sure whatever the update that has been happen, we have complete lineage from last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and we can see that who is the first time who is inserted of those data, right? So we can see all those things, what the time stamp is there, and then we have hash and everything, right? Then we have a certain database. So we know, so we as an architect that we should have that clarity that okay when we are defining any data architecture for certain business use case which kind of design pattern we can use and why we can use, right? The advantage which we are getting when we are going to scale that data architectures with maybe multiple tables, right? It can easily without going to be hinder or without going to be to impact any boilerplate level, right? The base level of that one, right? Now, if I can go a little bit further as EDM project, enterprise data models. So enterprise data models means that when we are designing the any data models, how the enterprise related practices is going to be have, right? What are the high level entities are there, which is also should be the part of the that design patterns, which also be the part of the that data quality related. How the enterprise governance practices is going to be have in the that data models, right? Whatever the data governance practices to get access. So EDM is not only about the data models we have, but EDM also says that okay, these are the data governance practices is going to be already as a baseline of the data models. So whatever the rest of the data models is going to be scaled, right? It has to be completely inherited all those enterprise data practices, data governance practices to that model. And once we have set this EDM reference model, then it can easily scalable to the other teams as well. So that is how we can design the unified. When it is comes to the implementation, this is I just talk about the conceptual level. But when it is come to the implementations level, then we need to know that okay, how you actually the data is going to be set in which storage.
Yes.
Whether do we have the storage and compute in the same infrastructure, whether we have distributed the compute and the storage in the two different infrastructure, so that is not going to be impact, and we completely have the decoupled. And then we have further partitions as well that, okay, if any moment of time, if we know that we have petabyte of data, right, then it should not be going to be impaired and the latency should not go high, right? So that we can partition the data on the probably on the recent basis or maybe some other attributes so that any times when any SQL query is going to happen, rather than should run on the entire volume data, it should run on the some set of the partition to provide the low latency of the data. So this is how generally very high level I just described, but this is how we can scale the data.
And now, one of the most interesting ones is that, you have architected systems like FX trading and digital payment platforms. Now, these are like environment where latency, reliability, and risk are very critical. So what are the hardest problems to solve when designing such systems?
Maybe I can take one example here, Rishikesh. Maybe I can take a example of the FX trading system, right, for an exchange, right? So, which is the one of the primary core banking kind of things where most of the trading is going to happen. They need to be know that what are the foreign exchange value, right? So, if we remember, right, I just talk about right when we are defining any particular architecture, right? So, in the part of the data governance practices, we know that who is the authoritative data source. Generally, most of the bank they have rely on the some of the authoritative data source who provide the foreign exchange value. In market, we have IAs, we have Refinitiv. So these are the authoritative data source for the foreign exchange. So most of the bank, what they does, they have to be pull all these foreign exchange informations from these authoritative data sources, right? Now, the one of the hardest problem is that this foreign exchange values is fluctuating, right? Every time it's going to be changed, right? And the second problem is that from region to region, they have a different time zone to
Yes.
update this foreign exchange, right? So if I just talk about Australian dollar, right? So
Yes.
they have going to refresh in their time, right? But that by that time we don't have the US values, US dollar values in a place, right? Because that is going to be refreshed after 8 or 10 hours, right? So as a bank, it is always very difficult to have all the foreign exchange values at the same time in our database so that they also do the some certain because this let's suppose if somebody has to be buy some certain stocks in Singapore dollar, but that particular guy is going to be there in UK and they have GBP in their side, right? So they, if they want to be buy the Singapore any stock in the Singapore, right, they need to be paying the Singapore dollar. But he's not in Singapore. He's in the Great Britain, right? They have the pound currency, right? So he or she need to know what is the exchange rate for this one, right?
Right.
So this is the one of the hardest problem because okay, I mean I got the current foreign exchange value of the Singapore dollar. I'm okay, but still I haven't received the UK pound exchange dollar, right? Because not refreshed yet, because there's a time zone differences, right? So what is the strategy that we need to be, have that how we can provide this exchange informations on the real time, right? So there are certain exceptions where, we also rely on the intraday as well, whether we can have the contract right now, but the trading is going to be materialized after some certain point of time
Yes.
when this information have place, right? And the second problem is that the precision. So let's suppose if I'm going to be calculate the exchange information of the Singapore dollar to the pound, right? Do I need to be calculate after decimal informations? Probably yes, right? Maybe I cannot keep it only the after decimal 2. I need to be also keep it the the exchange rate of the after decimal 4 because it's not about buying only one unit, it's buying the multiple unit, and after decimal 3 or 4, it's also going to be, to change the price of the that stock, right?
Hmm.
The managing the precision in any foreign before decimal, that is fine, you always manage, right? But sometime when you do the calculation, you will not get that precision level, right? So how you need to be make sure that you will get as much as the precision informations when you're calculating this one, so that
Yes.
it's not going to be make any loss both in the trading partners, both in the individual and both as a bank, right? So managing the just precisions in the database in real time, that is also the one of the hardest problem which we have seen. So getting refreshing the foreign exchange values and calculating the this conversion of the foreign exchange values to maintain precision, these are the basically one of the hardest. And how long you have to keep this foreign exchange information in your database, because that is a transitional in nature. Every time, every hour, it is keep changing. So you need to also plan how can you archive the old foreign exchange, or should you really need to archive or not.
Now this is very well explained. Like, got it. Now the next one is that you have designed non-blocking event-driven microservices also across multiple large-scale system. And as per your experience, where does microservices architecture actually start creating value, and where does it, kind of introduce unnecessary complexity?
Makes sense. I mean, yeah, this is one of the most promising, most asked questions. That's something which I'm going to be help in a way as per my experience, right? So maybe I can take a example, because
Yeah.
taking an example is one of the best way to explain anything, right? That's what we understood, right? Okay. I'm considering Rishikesh is running the one company, right? Rishikesh has some good company. He's running company, and they are very in a startup level, so they have good limited number of the employee with them, right? Rishikesh running their company as a full-time 5 days working, where he
Yes.
is expecting that the okay, whatever the number, like suppose if he has 50 employee, he has to be there in the office, and the HR of the Rishikesh company need to be made sure that they can properly track that their attendance in the offices, right? So okay, now what Rishikesh is looking for, yeah, maybe can I borrow some tools or maybe applications which I can use as a part of attendance system? Rishikesh is looking for in the market, and he got some good tools or application, but seems like it's just costly. And Rishikesh thought, okay, why should I go and invest as a SaaS, or maybe why should I go and to borrow this one? Let's to create our own application. This is a very limited use case. I have 50. I know after 5 years they can reach to the 100, not more than that. As a HR, what you need to know, what time the employee comes, or what time is log out. That's all. Very simple applications. Now, as an architect, Shik is going to be asking that, Shishir, this is the my limited use case. Maybe after 1 and 2 years, I can see a few more features like download the reports, something like that. But this is the my limited use case. Should I go with the microservices architectures? Probably not.
Ah, yes.
Why? Rishikesh is going to ask me the same question. Why? Because microservices is one of the very trendy
Hmm.
architectures, most of the people, and looks very fancy, right? What's very trendy. Okay, yeah, it's trendy, but it's not going to justify our use case. Our use case is very simple. Why we should to create this complex architecture? Because when we used to create this complex architecture, not only about developing the architecture, not only designing it, it's also think about how we are going to be implement, or we are going to be deploy this architecture in infrastructure, because running the complex architecture is also required. You need a scalable or high available complex infrastructure as well, which you need to be pay, right?
Yes.
So the cost is one of the important factors. So for this use case, we don't need microservice. We just have simple monolithic architecture, probably based on the MSC, have only one system. In one services, we have web UI as well. We have services, we have one simple database made by MySQL. We just create within a month time or 2 months, we just deploy, and that's all. We don't need this fancy architecture at all. So what I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to put, so adoption of any architecture is always be proportionally depend upon how well you understand the business use case. Now, let me take a second example. Rishikesh is, okay, Rishikesh has mentioned that, okay, Shishir, maybe I'm planning to venture into another business where I'm going to serve some of the B2C. Maybe he's trying to bring in some sort of the retail-based business where we have multiple retailers. Multiple retailers have some of the FMCG base, some of the pharmacy base, and on the basis of they have a different consumers. And I want to design some of the online shopping or e-commerce based platform which can cater all those different retailers, right? Yes, probably we have a proper justification. Probably we may require the microservices architecture because we are going to serve B2C, not B2B. We don't know any given point of time how many users going to use. We have certain different category of the retailers.
Yeah.
So in e-commerce, we need to onboard the pharmaceutical, we can onboard the FMCG, and we can have a different, and for them, they have a different consumer as well. Then probably it's make more justifiable that okay we can go with the microservice architecture, right? Because the business is different, the investment is different, and the profit
Yes.
which you guys is different, right? So any architecture design is always proportionally depend upon how well you understood your business
Yes.
and capacity planning. What's the profit, what's the loss, what investment, right? Because if Rishikesh is going to be put the investment I, he's expecting I plus X plus Y as a profit, right? You need to cater the different number of users. So yeah, that is how my definition is.
This is well explained. Like this is completely aligned with the business perspective of the things.
Right. What architecture does, architecture is always be act as a, I mean, there's a many differences, right?
Hmm.
So if I just talk about the solution architecture first, solution architecture is a bridge between the business and the technology team, right? So as a solution architect, how we are going to be solve your business use case with respect to the design, the requirements, the functional, the non-functional part, which can easily understand by the implementation team and design as per their needs, right? When I talk about the enterprise architecture, it can say that how your architecture is going to be fit in the longer period of time as a target architecture, how is your whole governance used like. So you need to be make sure that you are not going to be end up any penalties or any fines with respect to the regulators, with the auditors, and then you have the proper data governance practices, you have the proper enterprise architecture practices, you have certain architecture review board that okay, we started this project this point of time, all the solution architects been designed that at the point of time we have reached in a situation where we understood okay, we have a different variety of the architectures, and managing those different variety of architecture and the product is going to be cost use. So why don't we have a unified architecture in place that okay, whatever the system that we are designing, we know that okay, this is the target architectures, and once we implemented all the n number of applications, it is going to be bound in the certain scope only. So we know that as a, so I can tell as a business that okay, after 5 or 10 years, you always pay the that amount of the cost because we have the council or review board in a place where it makes sure that your target architecture always be the within the data scope. So this is how the enterprise architecture helps the business.
And now the last one is that given your deep exposure to data, cloud, and enterprise systems, where do you see AI genuinely adding value in architecture today?
Okay.
Where is it more of a hype? Hype or
Hi, right. I mean, see, I'm not I'm still learning, right? I'm still understanding, right? How AI is reshaping the future of the development, right? I'm still understanding, right? Still evaluating, right? Now, one hype that what I understood that AI is going to replace everything. I doubt still. Let me take one example here. How it is. Rishikesh is a one project manager, right? He have a budget for developing the one of the big features or with system, right? He have down the line 1 year of the goal to go to the some certain features as a part of the minimal viable product. He has to launch the some certain applications, right? As a project manager, Rishikesh had few resources who's going to be, to develop maybe 4 resources a developer, 2 QA, and one is a deployment engineer or cloud engineer, whatever. Now, after certain point of time, Rishikesh is thinking, oh, there's an AI bot agent in the market. What should I do? I heard that, yeah, it is going to write all the code. Wow, interesting. Then why should I keep the software developer in my team? Should I replace with the AI bot? Maybe I will get the more because I have to be paid a huge amount to the software developers. Okay, let me try. Okay. What he did, he has fired 2 resources as a software developer and he hired one AI bot as well, right? Now, as a project manager, he know that what features is going to be implemented, right? So he has to write the user story. As a user, I want to develop the platform which is going to be onboard few guests where I'm going to discuss with them. And if person behavior is going to change, or maybe we have to be also to capture some of the moments as well. So this are, he asked the AI agent that okay, I have this informations, and same time he also given us some of the tasks to the developers, right?
yes.
Now AI agent takes some information from you as a prompt He quickly generate the code. Then Rishikesh started, what should I do with them? Whether this code is correct or not. Same time, features and this user story when it Rishikesh is hand over to the developer, he come back with him. Hey Rishikesh, I didn't understand. Can you please explain me once again? Rishikesh make him understand, right? Oh, Rishi seems like probably we don't need to write the code. Why? Because there's one reusable code is already there. Shall we use it? Probably we can. Let me try to do POC. He did a POC, maybe he find that, okay, this reusable code is working, right? It saved my time. We can also use that code. But there's a problem. We need to little bit enhance that code because there are certain part which is not going to add. But you know what we need to do? Whatever the user story that we have written, you need to be add few more points as well. So software developer has provided feedback to improve your user story to accommodate a few changes. As per the feedback, Rishikesh refined that one. So all this conversation, that back and forth which is happening to make sure that whatever the outcomes which just comes as a code, it should be a production ready code, right? So what you get, okay, when you're doing a conversation, that you get the production ready code, but at the same time the agent write the one structure of the code, and nobody knows what we need to do with that one, right? So that is one example which I'm taking, that okay, AI is not going to be completely replace any developer. What they can do, the software developer can use that AI bot to write this 20-30% of extra code, and once he or she get that code, they can do some certain tricks, make integration with the reusable code, and to test and to make sure that whatever the acceptance criteria of that user story which was there, it has to be getting succeeded. So whatever the time he or she is going to take to write the few lines of the code, they can easily get it from the AI. What is it? So that is how AI. So what AI does, AI going to be make faster the process of the implementations. So whatever we were expecting in the 2 week of time, we will get that features in the 1 week of time of production. I'm talking about the production in the code.
Right.
So that is how I can see. Now, if I can talk about the enterprise architecture side, the AI, how AI is going to be help and shaping the architecture that. Let's suppose if I can take a generative AI example. As an architect, I have to be, once I understood the complete business requirement and I have all the clarity in a place, I have to be provide the design for that what I. So the generative AI can help any architect to generate the required design in form of the component, in form of the data model. So whatever time it takes me to write that design,
Yeah.
I can prompt, I can provide the information, and they can generate the some set of that design to me, which I can tweak and I can. So if I promise to the business that okay, I have to be provide this design or the whole design, not only design, because as an architect we need to provide whole set of the document, right? The software
Yes.
design specification. If it is takes 1 month of time, maybe using the AI, it can we can provide them in the 10 to 15 days as well, probably before than that, right? So this is how AI is going to be helped, right? And let's suppose if I can take any other AI as an example, let's suppose if I already have the approved design in a place, and then I need to be make sure whatever the implementation that is happening, I can ask that agent to make sure that can you please match to that implementation to my design, whether it is following all my design or not. Is there any breach in my design? If any time of if there's any breach of in my design, I can reach out to the team and to tell, hey, you are doing wrong. You should not doing this way. There's a breach in my design, right? You have to be go and to fix those part, right? So that is how the AI is going to be held the architecture. I mean, I just take a two example. There are many more examples, I believe. So this is how AI is helping in reshaping the architecture.
This is well explained, Shishir, and thank you so much for taking so many examples and explaining us in such layman terms. तो काफी understanding हो गई इस पूरे topic की. And
And that is a, one of the, so I mean, whatever that I learned in my practices when I was in the junior, when I was as a developer, I always think, okay, what is mean by the architect? What architect does? That time I thought, okay, maybe architect is a super technical guy, just seeing all this 360-degree of angle to know that how the whole design going to be work.
Hmm.
But when I become an architect and then my last 5 6 years, it's not only about the technical. The architect has the good soft skill and to to convincing skill to convince and to make them understand the whole solutions in very late term to the users or the business, right? Because business is not always be a very technical guy, right? So it's a responsibility of architect to make them understand in a very late term so that they can understand, oh, this is how my solutions look like, right? So this is the one of the prime responsibility of architect, to make them understand and to have the software skill to elaborate, explain, and to explain very well in a very late term to the user, so that user can have that level of confidence. Okay, I understood. Yeah, I have full confidence. If I have something in my mind, maybe I can to have discussed with you, and then again you can translate into the technical implementations, vice versa. So that is another quality which every architect has to be have, right?
Thank you so much, Shishir, for joining us and sharing all these insights on this podcast. And look forward to hosting you again, maybe on a different set of topics. Thank you so much.
Sure, it's always we love to discuss with you, and the way that you have presented the questions. I think this is the one of the key questions which I'm expecting that everyone has to be asked and everyone has to be discussed with that, right? To get their insight, and that is always very valuable. So thanks to presenting me and to having all those the special questions, or the specific questions which you have to ask me. So yeah, thank you, Rishikesh. Thanks for bringing me here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great day. See you. Bye bye.